start.
Well, first of all, Didier, thanks for coming here.
Oh,
it's always a great experience with your professionality, your friendship, which really appreciate.
Thank you.
And we are now looking back at 20 years since our victory in Daytona in 2002. And that was the third time I think we started the race together. First time with a Ferrari 333. I think we finished 8th. And then the second time we lost the engine, engine fire. And then we had this Dallara. What did you feel? How did you feel when we got to this third attempt to win the race with a new car?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, let's go backwards a little bit before the Dallara. Why we end up at Daytona with the Dallara? Well, since we raced the 333 successfully, for many years together, I always been convinced that Dallara can make the next step after that 333 will be a better car, a faster car, not better car because the Ferrari was already a good car, but a car who actually up to date. Well, if you forgot, we don't forget the Ferrari was really built in 93, 94, which was almost 10 years before this Dallara jet. And of course, what Dallara learned from the Ferrari 333, they apply in this car. And that's I was really convinced that we made the right move buying that car from Oreca, and I know that car will be a competitive car. The team to run it was Doran, with a lot of knowledge and know-how in Daytona and on American racetrack. And I think the choice of the car was the best we could do at that time.
Well, you made the pole position and you started the race in front. But I remember John Judd, who was with us, when he said, well, this engine has never done 5,000 kilometers in a row. And also the Dallara had never done such a race. So what was your expectation when we started?
Well, I mean, it's the expectation, the difference between me, I already had a win at Daytona before, in 98.
You already had this
Yes,
watch.
already that one. And then, it's not like, you don't approach the race differently, but, maybe I want to be more conservative on the driving side and also on the ref side of the engine, and I respect a lot of the rules from Judd, how to use the engine, and also the team, make a very strong rule about how to warm up the engine, how to warm up the oil before to start the engine. Judd was very meticulous about that, and Doran Racing was a good team to really follow the rules of Judd, and we did that for 24 hours, and the engine never failed. I remember the last hour of the race, we still have the same horsepower we had on the first day, and that was important. And I think John Judd was very pleased about finishing 24 hours with his engines, for sure.
And of course we had a good driver lineup, and of course I have to give you the credit because you recommended Max Papis and Mauro Baldi. Max Papis we've never raced with before, but with Mauro we did a few races, and I think that was also a key to the success.
We had a good chemistry between the four of us because we always want to win, and it's a kind of race where we cannot really show our ability to be faster from each other. We know we have to respect the engine rules from Judd, and everybody did it. That's why we won the race. And I think the chemistry between all the drivers is probably one of the best.
Was there any critical moment you were worried about the race?
Yeah, sometimes, one driver wants to be a bit faster than the other one, and then we have to say, whoa, slow down, and we need to finish the race. But that was the only part of the race where, we need to be cautious about, what the car can do and the risk in the traffic. Of course, the main competition at that time was the Riley, the official Riley car, and with good drivers, that was our main competition. competition, if you remember, we were on the lead lap with them and another car for many, many hours, which is, you never know the turnout is going to be. But everything turned, in our advantage. And actually, when you're talking about the qualification where we had the pole, it's funny because the team made a mistake. They put the hard Goodyears instead of a soft one,
and still made it.
And we still managed to have the pole. That was maybe a critic. I say, Kevin, well, we don't care about the pole. You say, well, Kevin, if the engine blow up after 1 hour, it's like we're never there. And we want always to show something in qualifying. But that was only a mistake, and it's funny because we laugh about it now. And
you started the race, and we led the race when I took over, and I remember that I lost the assistance, steering power,
the power steering,
assistance. And but we continued, and which was the right thing to do. We didn't want to repair it. We continued, but it was a little hard on the muscles.
On the muscles,
but in the end, it worked fine. And I think in such a long race, it's really long. It goes through the night, and then a lot can happen.
Definitely.
So I think we should also admit that we had a lot of luck. You need luck, in such a long race.
I mean, and for the public who really doesn't know about Daytona is always end of January, and it's the longest night of any racing. Le Mans is in June, it's the shortest night. It starts to get dark at 10:30, the sun rises at 5 o'clock. Daytona, it's 12 hours of night time. And of course, Daytona also, with that many cars and the difference in speed with cars, we're on the traffic, for a lot of time. And that's why also we need to be cautious, during that race. It's a hard race, it's a long race. The power steering I remember was an issue, mainly because those cars, maybe people ask why power steering in a race car? Well, because, the geometry of the suspension is so sophisticated. We run a lot of casters, which is kind of a way the suspension is designed. But because we run a lot of casters, we need some assistance in the steering because it's too hard. And also not only, for the muscle, but also for the feeling. When we have a very hard steering wheel with no assistance, well, when you turn the wheel and you don't really feel if the car gets some understeer, which is the push to the front in some hairpin, and we may destroy tires, because we turn more the wheel than we need, and that's what also the issue, but we managed to do well, and at the end of the day, the balance of the car was still pretty good.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the car. As you said, we got it from Oreca. It was raced once in Le Mans before I was able to buy them. And as you know, we did the 24-hour historic in 2017 with this car again. So the car was still running fine. And now it's exhibited in the Autobau collection, and I think it's great to be able to say this car is still running, and that's what actually we did today. What about today?
And run pretty good, actually, like a real race car.
Yeah, and I know from Marco Werner, who is also a professional racer, he said that the difference from this car to the actual new cars is not that big.
No, that's correct.
And that's quite amazing.
The main difference, I will say, now everybody uses the paddle shift, in racing, which is the gears of the steering wheel. The car was not designed to do that. The car was designed to use the sequential transmission. Actually, the generation after this Dallara, Oreca raced with a different engine at Le Mans, and they had the paddle shift. But in America, we used the sequential, and it was very sufficient. That's the main difference with the cars as today, really. I mean, maybe today's cars get a bit more downforce because the car manufacturers develop more downforce from the wind tunnel, about the rear wing, the front of the car, the design, the side pod. But this car is still up to date, and the sound of the engine, you cannot really beat that when you have
maybe a last question to what do you think about the actual racers, the new generation? What would you advise them? You know, how to do such a long race?
The main problem I can see, if you can see the rules now, if we compare today's car with 20 years ago, today's cars require, like Le Mans car, they require many people to run the car because the sophistication of the hybrid system between, you know, the combustion engines and the electrical engine, the recuperation of the energy and the electricity going back to the batteries to help the engine to get more power. It's very complicated, and a small private team who run a car like that cannot do that. I mean, it's impossible. You need too many people. It's not fun. I think we end up here with the last generation where anybody can start the engine, run the car properly without having, you know, 100 technicians looking at the car. And unfortunately, the Formula One is the same way. With Formula One, when you look at the car from the 90s, that's the last generation where anybody can run those cars. Today's cars, you know, the sophistication about, you know, the hybrid system, you need so many technicians to start a car. And on the collection point of view, we're still in a good generation with this car for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can only be grateful and thankful for having had that experience, and also being able in my age to still run the car, drive the car.
It's wonderful. Me too.
So this is really a very nice success.
And we're going back to our first time we met through Marcus Arts, and I met Marcus. You know, it's funny. It was in '84. We were racing Formula 2 together, not in the same team, but I was driving the Martini and he was running Mac Tackwell in the March. And you know, 2 times during the year we end up being next to each other in the garage, and we try to sympathize. And you know, I like Marcus, I like his philosophy. He's a passionate, you know, like I am. And then a few months later, he called me up and said, "Oh, I'm running a Swiss car at the 1,000 kilometers of Imola, and you want to drive the car?" I said, "Well, sure, yeah, why not?" And that was my first race with Marcus.
Our friendship developed
exactly
over time,
through Marcus, and then you know, you came to Phoenix, you know, later on, probably 10 years later in '94.
Yeah.
That's the first time I met you, and then
your girl was
baby. Yes,
baby,
I remember.
You know, I remember that.
And, I took you to see the sunset in Pinnacle Peak. You remember, in Arizona, the winter sunset in Arizona is one of the most beautiful. I mean, with the pastel sky on the horizon. You know, we really enjoy that. I remember we hiked a little bit on the rocks and to see that, and then of course
trying to avoid the scorpions.
The scorpions and the rattlesnakes. Yes,
yeah. No, I think it's been wonderful, Didier. I can only thank you.
Same for me. I mean, we
and you know, a relationship, a friendship over almost 30 years is not very standard in this business.
And we share the same passion. We share the same wins and the same. We fail from time to time, but that's part of racing. And you know, I thank you also for those years.
You have not only been a very good professional race car driver, but also an excellent coach. I must admit, without you, I could never have done
I mean, we don't forget, I don't see that as a coach.
And you were not always easy, you know, you were pushing me.
We were on the same boat, which is, you know, we need to help each other as a team, you know, you know, I may also need have some weakness somewhere, and I had to have some help for somebody else, especially, you know, when you look at the data and the speed, you know, helping you, helping me, you know, helping each other, make the team goes up and make the team more competitive. And I find that's what we did, and that's what the friendship and the chemistry was enter into place.
Yeah, and we had a good team, you know, and there again, you were the one you thought to tell me that I should join the team in the US, and I just would like to give my many thanks and best wishes to the whole team, because I know you meet them from time to time.
Definitely.
Because you live in the US.
Yes.
I don't see them too often, unfortunately, but the memories will remain. They will stay.
They didn't forget. For sure.
Okay, Didier.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you very much.
It's been a great pleasure, and we continue.
We continue. Maybe 20 years is a bit maybe too far from now, but for sure the next few years, I hope.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It's okay?
Good.
All right.